moving in this way, all of a sudden it has turned because of the air propulsion. Then the movement will automatically change, like the swing of the cricket ball, or the spinning the football, or swinging the football. So these are nothing but when our body, suppose we are running in the track or the curve, then also we have to incline towards the center. That is what the internal force and the external forces, when it affects on the body and the resultant movement comes up. That is what exactly is biomechanics. So the biomechanics is the science of movement of a living body, including how muscles, bones, tendons, ligaments work together to produce a movement. So there are so many things now coming up. You must know them. The whole body system, with the skeletal system, the muscular system, the ligaments, tendons, everything has to be understood. Otherwise, you cannot really speak about the movements. So the American Society of Biomechanics says that biomechanics represent the broad interplay between mechanics and biological system. So in this way, there are many definitions, many explanations are given. The more important biomechanical principles are force, motion, range of motion, inertia, and force and time. So just a minute. I think. Now it comes, there are two words, it is bio and the mechanics. Bio is the living, as I told you, as I explained you, and it is a mechanics. Mechanics is further divided into two. One is statics and another one is dynamics. Statics, suppose I am sitting. Even though I am sitting, there are lots of muscles who are maintaining the posture. Is it clear? The second thing is, if a body is in the uniform motion, suppose I am a driver, I am driving a car or a motorcycle, but in a constant motion, that is also known as statics. So that type of position of the body, if we are studying about it, it is also called statics. And what is dynamics? When a body is in a accelerated by the action of forces, we have created or generated a force by which we are accelerating. We are moving fast from one point to another point. That is called your dynamics. So all the sports movements, we consider it as a dynamics. In dynamics, again, it is divided into two. It is kinematics and kinetics. Then what is kinetics? Kinematics. Kinematics is motion description. What are the motion? For example, I am traveling, the person A is traveling to point B. When a person is traveling from one point to another point, it will be calculated by the meters or the feet. So if I am traveling in an angular way, it is the angular radian or the degrees. How much degrees I have traveled, like running in the track. And this, why we need to learn, we need, all because if you happen to recollect, in the year 2008, Usain Bolt, who is a renowned athlete, who is not less than 6.5 feet tall, 6 feet and 5 inches. So his stride length is almost 2.44 meter. Can you understand? If the stride length is 2.44 meter, it is almost 2.5 meter, and he take only 41 steps to cover 100 meters. So if we have a huge number of photographies or videography, or even with the open eye, with the naked eye, we cannot really explain or to know how he has developed that quality. Along with him, another athlete was Tyson Gay, who was only 5 feet and 11 inches. His stride length is 2.20 meter. Now you can understand, he has to run almost 45.45 meter. This is the basic differences. आप 41 स्टेप में आप 100 मीटर पूरा कर रहे हैं. नंबर वन कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ हुसैन बोल्ट. एंड टाइसन इज स्ट्रगलिंग फॉर आफ्टर 45.45 स्टेप्स. तो ऑलरेडी आप 4 स्टेप ज्यादा लेके आप 100 मीटर पूरा कर रहे हैं हुसैन बोल्ट के साथ. Do you think you can win it? Certainly not. So how we have to measure? So this kinematics will tell you कि इतना stride length था, ये इतना body position था, इतना distance उसने cover किया इतने time में. So this is how the kinematics speaks or deals with every player. अब ये तो रहा आपका movement में. Suppose if we go for another example, say a javelin thrower. So with what speed he just at the approach run. In the approach run, how much speed he has generated, and at the point of release, that force we have to calculate, and the momentum, then accordingly the projectile motion of your javelin, at what angle he has thrown it and when it has landed. So these all deals with your kinematics. And what is the kinetics? Is concerned with determining the cause of motion. It is a cause of motion. For example, the running. For example, we are running in the track. If your nails are bigger, then what will happen? We'll get a more friction. If you get a more friction, then your body, you cannot propel your body fast. So there is a, say, the headwind is there. Then also you cannot really move fast. So these are the difficulties or the issues which the kinetics takes into consideration. So you can see when an athlete just leaves the starting point, from starting point, we measure the CG, the line of gravity, and the body posture, the toe. If we draw a line from head to the toe, then only we'll come to know how much inclined he is or she is. Now, the sports biomechanics or the sports biomechanical analysis is a scientific discipline in sports science which studies biomechanical parameters of the human body during the sports movement. So now you can understand the sportsman. If you are a coach, if you are a physical teacher, or if you are a doctor, or if you are a physio, whosoever he or she is, unless and until you know the sports biomechanics, the movement science, you will always has to depend on the others. कैसा चल रहा है आपका कोचिंग? बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है. Even you don't know the posture and the movement analysis, then how you can say कि बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है कोचिंग? You cannot really say. Why? Because you don't know the correct movement or the sequence of movement or the chain of movement for the particular execution of the skill. So it based on the professional athlete. If you want to be a good professional athlete or as a coach or a trainer, you must know the biomechanics of the person. Now, what are the scopes of biomechanics? Evaluate process, technique, or optimize your efficiency, injury potential, and prevention. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very sorry. Maybe there are a lot of doctors or the what is called physios are there. So, if you are unable to perform or execute the skill properly, then you have to face the doctor. So biomechanics is absolutely a preventive medicine, you can say. Why? Because I will take you after some time in the next slide how to enhance the acquisition of the sports skill, motor learning, then designing appropriate conditioning program to enhance the performance. Suppose you are coming after the injury or any sports injury, then the conditioning program, how you have to design, because if there is a pain on any leg or your shoulders or any joint, then you have to consider all those factors and how much dose in terms of your volume or intensity has to be given. That has to be taken very carefully. Please don't disturb the skin. किसी ने स्क्रीन पे कुछ येलो लाइन खींचा है आपने, प्लीज नहीं करें आप. You all are matured and adult. Now the last one is your equipment design and selection. How all the sports equipments, whatever are being designed, it is depends on only biomechanics. For example, say for example, if a javelin thrower is throwing the javelin, how far it will land. अगर आप 50 मीटर मारते हैं तो आपके लिए javelin कुछ और होगा. If you are throwing more than 80 and 80 plus, then aerodynamic javelin is needed. So all those equipments plus your gears, all the protective gears like your what is called helmet, your gloves, your headgear, your gums, anything can be, whatever it is being designed, it is designed through biomechanical aspect, or biomechanical engineers are only helping. Then to know the movement. अब बात यह आता है कि हमारा बेसिक मूवमेंट क्या होगा. So if you stand palm facing forward, ऐसे अगर जो इमेज दिखा रहे हैं उसमें अगर आप देखते हैं कि palm facing, palm को आगे देके पैर को खोल के आप खड़े होते हैं and eyes are parallel to the ground, तो this is called the anatomical position, जिसमें आपका legs और knees एकदम बिल्कुल straight होना चाहिए, सीधा होना चाहिए, toes pointing forward, arms by the side of the body and palm facing forward. ये basic position से हमारा जितना movement होता है, अगर हम लोग साइड में ले जाते हैं, अगर हम लोग आगे उठाते हैं, अगर बेंड करते हैं, साइड में ले जाते हैं, so every movement is originated from each and every joint. So we must know the anatomical position, जिससे आप बोल सकते हैं कि हाँ, this is called flexion, this is called extension, this is called hyperflexion, this is called hyperextension. So to know all those things, we need to have the body movements. Body movement किसमें होता है? It is based on the plane, जिसको सतह कहते हैं plane को. तो there are 3 types of plane. One is called frontal plane, जो आप मेरे को सामने से देख रहे हैं. If you are watching me from the side, this is called your transverse plane, sagittal plane, sorry, from the side. And if you dissect me from the waist, कमर से अगर आप bending कर रहे हैं, that is on the transverse plane. और उसके just 90 degree angle पे जो imaginary line move कर रहे हैं, that is called your axis. So there are 3 axes again. The frontal axis जो side to side, shoulder to shoulder जाते हैं, जिसमें हम लोग हाथ को आगे पीछे मूव कराते हैं, या forward extension, flexion, दोनों ही हम लोग frontal axis पे करते हैं. जब sagittal plane पे movement होता है तो frontal axis पे हमारा movement होता है, नहीं तो it is not possible, right? Then comes, you must know the bare requirement to know the skeletal system. If you don't know the measured bones of your body, you will cannot discuss the movements of the human body and the muscles. Muscles क्यों? क्योंकि muscles को अगर आप नहीं जानते हैं तो ना ही आप ट्रेनिंग को शेड्यूल कर सकते हैं, ना कौन सा मसल में प्रॉब्लम है, इश्यूज है, उसको आप बता सकते हैं. जब तक मसल्स के बारे में आप नहीं जानेंगे, बोन्स के बारे में नहीं जानेंगे, तो आपका मूवमेंट किस मसल के द्वारा हो रहे हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर आप हाथ को साइड में उठा रहे हैं तो आपका, आप देखिए डेल्टॉइड लिखा हुआ है आपके राइट हैंड साइड में, जो फिगर है इसके ऊपर देखिए डेल्टॉइड लिखा है. तो दिस पर्टिकुलर मसल इज प्राइमरीली कंसर्न हाथ को उठाने के लिए, राइट? सो दिस मसल्स प्लेज अ ह्यूज रोल. So there are many movements in the human body, that is flexion. जब एंगल छोटा करते हैं, extension is the reverse, like we go for the bicep curl. Bicep curl means bicep की flexion करना. Then extension is the reverse movement. Abduction is taking the arms away from your body, and adduction is just bringing it back to the body. Then it is called the medial rotation, when the movement is moving towards the body, towards the inside. अगर हाथ को अगर अंदर की तरफ आप मूवमेंट करते हैं, that is called the medial rotation. And if it is going away, बाहर की तरफ, हथेली को बाहर की तरफ मूव कराते हैं, that is called lateral rotation. Then it is elevation. Elevation is when we take the shoulders up. This is called elevation, and the reverse movement is called depression. Then it is called pronation. Pronation is from the elbow. If we make it in, You can see this is the position. From here, if I turn the arm down, this is called pronation and it is called supination. जब हथेली ऊपर की तरफ जाता है, that is called supination. So usually the doctors say you lie on the prone position or in a supination position. Then the other movements are dorsiflexion and plantar flexion, which takes place only in your ankle joint. Dorsi means towards the shin bone. अगर उंगलियों को ऊपर की तरफ उठाते हैं, that is called dorsiflexion, and जब रिवर्स ले जाते हैं, it is called plantar flexion. And inversion, eversion, उस पंजे को अंदर की तरफ लेते हैं, it is called inversion. और एंकल जॉइंट से बाहर की तरफ जब ले जाते हैं, इसको called eversion. सो इसके साथ आप हाइपर सब में लगा सकते हैं. हाइपर फ्लेक्शन होता है, हाइपर एक्सटेंशन होता है, हाइपर एबडक्शन, हाइपर एडक्शन, इवन हॉरिजॉन्टल फ्लेक्शन भी होता है हॉरिजॉन्टल लेवल पे. सो दीज आर द मूवमेंट्स. देयर आर ऑलमोस्ट 15-16 मूवमेंट्स, बेसिक मूवमेंट्स. बट डू यू थिंक वी आर concerned with only the movements which are specified? No. Most of the cases, the sports during our sports movement, it is called oblique plane and oblique axis. हम आड़ा तिरछा कैसे भी movement करते हैं. In this movement, in every segment, in every small bit of change, there are a lot of changes in the position of the body. Your axis and planes will keep on changing accordingly. So we must know it. So these are the examples which I was speaking. It is the flexion of the forearm. When there is a flexion of the forearm, from the elbow joint, there is a ball or a shot in the hand to lift it close to your shoulder. That is called bicep curl or the flexion of your arm. Accordingly, the leg movement is there. Then the extension of your legs are also shown. Now, when we study all the movements, आप देख सकते हैं the figure from the first figure till the last figure. It is a cricket baller. In cricket, when I used to work for the BCCI, we used to use the silicon software, where it is a, I think, New Zealand software, which was the first software in the world. So there we used to study all the small basic movements and we just correct the athlete accordingly. Otherwise क्या होता है, देखिए आपने ये जंप किया, लैंडिंग अगर आपका डायरेक्टली हिल पे आ जाता है, सपोज आई टेक ए ह्यूज लॉन्ग स्ट्राइड एंड आई एम लैंडिंग ऑन द हिल, तो हिल का इंजरी 100% है. सो दिस moments are being captured or we have to take the videography, and there are now n number of movements. Now there is no need also. We can really go for all the scientific way, like AI, artificial intelligence also we can use for particular bowler, or we can really design or modify the technique. So if you see accordingly, then there are it helps in the prevention of injuries. Identify the cause of injury. कैसे आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं कॉज ऑफ इंजरी? आप डॉक्टर है, आप डॉक्टर के पास आपका एक डॉक्टर का मेडिकल डोमेन का आपका नॉलेज, आप प्लेयर है, आपका एक पर्टिकुलर डोमेन ऑफ स्किल एक्सपीरियंस है, आप उसको यूज कर रहे हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल मैं एक बैडमिंटन प्लेयर नहीं हूं, अब मैं आपको शो कर रहा हूं. इफ यू कैन सी मी, यहाँ पे हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, रैकेट को लेके, रैकेट इज एन एक्सटेंशन ऑफ योर आर्म. फ्रॉम हियर आई एम जस्ट प्लेइंग लाइक दिस, आई एम continuously playing the shuttle like this. Usually it happens with the novice. What I am doing, actually I am creating a tendinitis. टेनिस एल्बो हम डेवलप करेंगे, नहीं तो आपका जो शोल्डर में इंजरी 100% होगा. This is must, because it is not the correct execution. In badminton we have to play from the shoulder. So when we are playing absolutely across the body, follow through अगर नहीं देते, if we restrict the movement, then the pronator will go off 100%. That helps in process of rehabilitation. Rehabilitation में ये बहुत ज़्यादा helpful होगा आपका biomechanical knowledge अगर हो, क्योंकि अपने को पता होना चाहिए कि the correct movement for that particular joint in the knee. For example, the knee movement very restricted. It is flexion and extension. एंड इफ यू हैंग द नी, घुटना को अगर आप टेबल के ऊपर बैठ के हैंग कर देते तो वो ए लिटिल इनवर्ट रोटेशन होगा, आउटवर्ड रोटेशन होगा, बट दैट इज अनवाइज. कुछ लोग आज के तारीख में भी घुटनों को घुमाते हैं, स्पेशली इन द डिफेंस. प्लीज प्लीज एंड प्लीज आप इनको अवॉइड कीजिए. घुटना कभी घूमता नहीं है. इवन द नेक वी से just rotate half, semicircle, don't go for the complete rotation. You can say that yeah, there are so many baba and so many people, they are going for the complete rotation. No, the joint is not made to go for the 360 turn. So then by identifying the cause of rehabilitation, exercise changes can be made in the technique. अगर आपका कोई प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है तो उसमें हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं, टेक्निक को भी हम चेंज करके गेम खेल सकते हैं. In the last session, day before yesterday, there was a question. Sir, after 200 arrows, the question was from Pakistan. So after 200 release of a arrow, the palm हथेली becomes pale और उसमें कुछ दम नहीं होता है. Actually, every time you are struggling with your strength and the body posture. By that time, you become numb. So it is wise. That day also I told that the technique, if the technique is not correct, there are some apps available in the mobile called Hudl, HUDL, Hudl technique. That is one simple app which I have been using. It is ultimately very good for small reasons. So it helps for the equipment designing, your shoes, sports clothes, your swimsuit, aerodynamic clothing, cricket helmet, this thing, that thing, everything we are developing through the biomechanical knowledge and the biomechanical movement analysis. When we say biomechanical movement analysis, these are the concepts which we have been using. Anatomy used for the activity, which body parts we are using. Then the directional terminology, the movement which I have told you. Then the plane of motion, in which plane the motion or the movement is taking place. Types of bones or the joint. Which bone, is it a long bone, is it a short bone? Which bone? Then the types of lever, which plays again a vital role. If it is a fast, when to use the long lever and when to use the small lever. So then those things we have to know, the mechanical advantages of the levers, the types of muscle contraction, then the laws of motion, force, projectile, friction, balance, equilibrium, and stability, and whatnot. So I'll tell you, I'll explain you basic movements, or it's called the running gait. Gait is nothing but your movement. हर इंसान को एक चीज जरूर करना पड़ता है. अगर आप खिलाड़ी हैं नहीं है तो भी आप चलते हैं, आप दौड़ते हैं, तो उसकी स्टडी हम करेंगे ए बिट डिटेल, सो दैट यू शुड नो हाउ वी रियली एनालाइज द रनिंग मूवमेंट. So understanding the gait cycle and its many components can help you to pick up the right running shoes and optimize your performance and training efficiency. अब क्या होता है, जब हम लोग गेट के बारे में प्रॉपर रनिंग टेक्निक, आप में से आई डोंट नो हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू आर प्रेजेंट एट दिस मोमेंट, सो 100 लोग के ऊपर ही आते हैं आप लोग. कितने लोगों ने रनिंग एज ए टेक्निक सीखा है? आपने स्प्रिंट या स्पीड के लिए आपने दौड़ा है या दौड़ाया है या आपको दौड़ाया गया है? आप दौड़े हैं बहुत तेज, बहुत अच्छी बात है, फॉर दैट आई एम रियली अप्लॉज यू. बट क्वेश्चन इज, आप लोगों को कितने लोगों को वॉक करना सिखाया है? वॉकिंग इज अ टेक्निक, रनिंग इज अ टेक्निक. जब भी मैं स्टेडियम में जाता हूं, when I see that people are just walking, I said, why you are walking? सर ये इवेंट है. मैं बोला डेली तुम टाइम देखते हो, डू यू थिंक यू विल इंक्रीज योर टाइमिंग? कैन यू इंक्रीज योर परफॉर्मेंस बाय डिक्रीजिंग योर टाइमिंग? इट इज द चैलेंज. सो अनलेस until you know the technique properly, you cannot. This is an example, the Usain Bolt, as I told you earlier, how he has done, and this is the research paper. So you can see initially it is 3 degree, then the degrees increased, then lastly when it is in the 12th position, he is so tall that his stride length, to increase the stride length, he has gone from the toe to the body. अगर इसमें एंगल बनाते हैं तो it is almost 30 degree. Body को to incline it up to 30 degree is really a great challenge. We run almost keeping our body maybe 3 to 5 degree angle, but Usain Bolt can decrease it or increase the angle up to 30 degree so that he gets a dynamic balance for the high speed. So the gait is really an important aspect, because more specifically the great cycle is the series of movement जिसमें कि हाथ पैर अपना पूरा एक साथ सिंक्रोनाइज्ड वे पे वी आर रनिंग फॉर फास्ट मूवमेंट. देन गेट साइकिल में क्या होता है, देयर आर टू फेज स्पेसिफिकली, एक है स्टांस फेज, दूसरा स्विंग फेज. स्टांस फेज क्या होता है, व्हेन द फुट इज इन द कांटेक्ट विद द ग्राउंड. जब आप खड़े हैं एक पैर के ऊपर भी आप टोज पे है, दैट इज कॉल्ड स्टांस. एंड स्विंग फेज है व्हेन द फुट इज नॉट इन द कांटेक्ट विद द ग्राउंड. हम जब पैदल चलते हैं तो क्या होता है, एक पैर तो जमीन पे रहता है, दूसरा पैर हवा में उठा के उसको ड्राइव करके दूसरा लैंड करता है, फिर इसको उठा के फिर आगे जाते हैं, फिर कंटिन्यूअसली मूव करते हैं. पर स्विंगिंग फेज में हम लोग क्या करते हैं, जब रनिंग करते हैं एक फेज ऐसा आता है कि दोनों पैर हवा में तैर रहे हैं हम, राइट. That is called your swing phase. You can see the running gait. Here the stance. Then it is impact होता है. Then we drive. Drive जब करते हैं तो टोस से ड्राइव करते हैं, and then रिकवरी करते हैं तो इस पैर को ऊपर ले जाते हैं, फिर ये साइक्लिक मूवमेंट पे लीप करके हम लोग इनिशियल कांटेक्ट में लाते हैं. अब डिपेंड करता है कि हमारा फ्रंट फुट टच करे पहले या हिल टच करे. इट डिपेंड्स ओनली ऑन द स्पीड. अगर आप स्प्रिंटर है तो डेफिनेटली यू विल लैंड ऑन द बॉल ऑफ द फुट, नॉट ऑन द हिल एग्जैक्टली. इफ यू टेक ए ह्यूज स्ट्राइड, देन डेफिनेटली ऑब्वियसली यू विल हिट द हिल एंड यू विल विजिट द डॉक्टर एज सून एज पॉसिबल. सो इन द स्टांस फेज क्या होता है कि द स्टांस फेज इज द फर्स्ट फेज ऑफ द गेट साइकिल. इट बिगिंस व्हेन योर हिल मेक्स कांटेक्ट विद द ग्राउंड. जब हमारा हिल कांटेक्ट में आता है, ये स्प्रिंटिंग की बात नहीं कर रहा हूं, ये सिंपल जॉगिंग की बात कर रहा हूं. देन इट बिगिंस व्हेन योर हिल मेक्स अ कांटेक्ट विद द ग्राउंड एंड इट एंड्स ऑफ द टो. हम लोग हिल को ऐसे टच करते हैं, लेट मी शो यू. हम हिल को टच करते हैं, देन वी गो साइड एंड वी रीच ऑन द बॉल ऑफ द फुट, देन थ्रू द टोज ऑफ करके हम लोग इसको ड्राइव करते हैं. सो दिस इज द स्टांस फेज. तो इसमें क्या होता है कि when it comes to the performance and injury prevention, the stance phase is usually under the spotlight. वो ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट होता है क्योंकि इसमें मिड स्टांस और प्रोपल्शन, क्योंकि इसको रखते ही हम लोग उठ जाते हैं. सो naked eye it is very difficult to find out. Now you can see the hill is landing, and then in the second phase you can see कि पैर के जो वजन है हिल्स में गिरते हुए बाहर की तरफ आके बॉल ऑफ द फुट उंगलियों के जस्ट नीचे और द फ्रंट फुट में बॉडी वेट ट्रांसफर होता है. होने के बाद ये उंगलियों के सारे, ये जो टो है, इनके सारे आप प्रोपेल करके पुश करते हैं बॉडी को आगे जाने के लिए. दिस इज द इनिशियल एंड द इनिशियल कांटेक्ट. फिर आगे इसको साइक्लिक वे में हम लोग बार बार रखते हैं और उठा के लेके जाते हैं. दैट इज ऑल्सो कॉल्ड द फुट स्ट्राइक. सो टिपिकली हम लोग क्या करते हैं, हिल आता है, फिर मिड फुट आता है और द फोर्थ फुट स्ट्राइक बेस्ड ऑन योर रनिंग स्पीड. मैंने जो पहले बोला, रनिंग स्पीड के ऊपर निर्भर करता है आप कौन सा पहले रखेंगे. तो रनिंग स्टाइल के इसमें बायोमेकेनिक्स एटसेट्रा एंड एंड्स विद द फोर्थ फुट और द ग्राउंड कांटेक्ट. सो इस तरीके से हमारा बॉडी का मूवमेंट होता है. अब जब हमारा पैर रख रहे हैं, सपोज कीजिए, इमेजिन कीजिए अपने आप में एक बार कि हम इस पोजीशन पे दौड़ रहे हैं, तो उस पोजीशन पे हर एंगल, हर जॉइंट में मूवमेंट हो रहा है. कौन सा बोन उसमें कांटेक्ट में आ रहा है, फिट से ले लीजिए. तो एंकल जॉइंट में कौन कौन सा बोन्स है आपको पता होना चाहिए. आपका टोज अगर इनसाइड होता है, जैसे कैटवॉक करते हैं क्रॉस लेग करके, उसमें आप जरूर देखेंगे जब कैटवॉक अगर कोई करता है रनिंग के टाइम पे, देन एक्चुअली इंस्टेड ऑफ द फोर्स आपको देना चाहिए सामने की तरफ। आप अगर पंजे को अंदर की तरफ रखते हैं तो ऑटोमेटिकली आपका फोर्स में कम से कम डिस्टेंस 2 से 3 सेंटीमीटर डिस्टेंस एवरी फिट पे आप लूज कर रहे हैं, और आपका बॉडी का जो फोर्स है वो तेज नहीं हो सकता है। उससे इश्यूज क्या आएगा, आपका नी जॉइंट 100% खराब हो जाएगा। ऐसे बहुत सारे क्रिकेटर हैं जिन लोग की लास्ट स्टेप में दे कीप द टोज इनसाइड एक्सेप्ट द स्पिनर, स्पिनर को रखना पड़ता है बॉल ऑफ द फुट पे, बट अदर्स आर अगर रखते हैं स्पीड बॉलर, if your toe is pointing towards the leg slip, then definitely the left leg, if you are right-handed cricketer, then you will lose your ankle joint, क्योंकि ये ऐसे रोल करेंगे, ये मूवमेंट आएगा आपका। So those things we have to understand. So you can see now all the movements जो रनिंग कर रहे हैं सबका अलग अलग मूवमेंट्स आप देखिए। इफ यू सी द सेंटर, दिस गाय, उनका आर्म मूवमेंट देखिए, इनका आर्म मूवमेंट देखिए, लेकिन ये जो साइड है जो इटली का, उसका आर्म मूवमेंट देखिए, ये कुछ और ही कर रहे हैं। सो क्या ये लोग ट्रेंड नहीं है? ट्रेंड है, बट अगेन द स्टाइल डिफरेंस। सो दैट इज अगेन अनदर इशू। बट यू कैन सी द शू सोल, it is absolutely landing on the perfect pointing towards the direction of the race. Then this is called again the support phase, जो मैं बार बार एक्सप्लेन कर रहा हूँ। सो इस तरीके से हम लोग का बैंड होता है। अब जो मिड पुश होता है उसमें क्या होता है, ट्रंक साइड में बैंड होता है। हम जब एक साइड में लैंड किया तो ऑटोमेटिकली ट्रंक के साइड में हम बैंड करेंगे, करने के बाद लेटरल पेल्विक ड्रॉप होगा, उस साइड में हम लोग थोड़ा सा ऐसे साइड से झुक जाएंगे, गिरेंगे क्योंकि उस पे ऊपर बॉडी वेट आ रहा है। बट इफ इट ड्रॉप टू मच देन अगेन इट इज likely to be an injured, then नी सेंटर पोजीशन में रखना पड़ेगा, देन नी सेपरेशन होना चाहिए, फुट कंफर्टेबल पोजीशन में होना चाहिए, रियर फुट पोजीशन शुड बी करेक्ट, देन फोर फुट पोजीशन, पीछे वाला पैर और सामने वाला पैर दोनों, बोथ द पोजीशन शुड बी एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट, देन द ट्रंक रोटेशन, ये टिल्टिंग मूवमेंट होगा द मोमेंट यू टेक ए फॉरवर्ड मूवमेंट, क्योंकि ये एक पुश कर रहा है, दूसरा आ रहा है, ये कंटिन्यूसली ये पुश होगा, एक साइड ड्रॉप भी होगा हल्का सा, बट यू हैव टू मेंटेन ए इरेक्ट और सो कॉल्ड द टॉल मूवमेंट पोजीशन ऑफ योर बॉडी, सो दैट द आर्म स्विंग एंड द हिल हाइट दैट मेक्स अ सेंस। अगर आपका हिल हाइट पे नहीं जाता है, ऊपर नहीं जाता है, देन योर स्विंग और सो कॉल्ड द साइकिल विल बी लेसर। यू कैन सी नाउ द सेम थिंग, ये एक लाइन ड्रॉ किया जहां पे हिल से लेके टो तक, देखिए उसका बेंडिंग फॉरवर्ड है, सो दैट द सीजी इज फॉलिंग अहेड ऑफ हिज बॉडी। व्हेन द सीजी इज फॉलिंग अहेड ऑफ द बॉडी, व्हाट विल हैपन, यू हैव टू ब्रिंग द बैक लेग टू फ्रंट पोजीशन, मतलब ये जल्दी जल्दी से आप दूसरा पैर लाएंगे, फिर भी अगर सीजी सामने ड्रॉप हो रहा है तो दिस इज कॉल्ड डायनेमिक बैलेंस। तो ये कंटिन्यूसली आप बैलेंस करते जा रहे हैं और आपका स्पीड बढ़ता जाएगा, नॉट लाइक द स्ट्रेट पर्सन। इधर देखिए जो लेफ्ट हैंड साइड में है, ये बॉडी इज एब्सोल्युटली स्ट्रांग, एंड the toe propulsion, in the toe propulsion, the propulsion portion of is the final stage। टो को हम टो के ऊपर उठते हुए, टो के ऊपर पूरा बॉडी आ जाता है उस पंजे का, और हम उसको आगे की ओर ले जाते हैं। सो इसमें कुछ मसल्स जो काम में आते हैं, दैट इज कॉल्ड गैस्ट्रोइलियस मसल, जो आपके काफ मसल भी कहते हैं हम लोग, शायद हिंदी में पिंडली भी कहते हैं इसको, सोलियस मसल उसके जस्ट नीचे, फिर एचिलिस टेंडन, एचिलिस टेंडन आपके हील के ऊपर और गैस्ट्रिकनेस का जोड़ते हैं, तो वो एक्चुअली मसल आपको प्लैंटर फ्लेक्शन, जो प्लैंटर फ्लेक्शन हम पैर नीचे की तरफ, एंकल को जब नीचे की तरफ ले जाते हैं, उसी को हम लोग कह रहे हैं प्लैंटर फ्लेक्शन। तो ये सारे मसल्स अगर थोड़ा सा भी एचिलिस टेंडन में या सोलियस में या गैस्ट्रोइलियस में अगर स्ट्रेंथ की कमी है, आपने ज्यादा स्पीड से भागने की कोशिश की, तो आप डॉक्टर के पास रिपोर्ट करना पड़ेगा और आप इंजर्ड होंगे। सो लास्ट वन इज द स्विंग फेस। जो स्विंग फेस मैंने बताया था, तो ये ध्यान में रखें, द स्विंग फेज इज द लॉन्गेस्ट फेज ऑफ द रनिंग गेट, मेकिंग द रिमेनिंग 60% ऑफ द रनिंग गेट कंपेयर्ड टू द 40% ऑफ द वॉकिंग गेट। तो स्विंगिंग फेज में क्या होता है, हम लोग जब एयर में रहते हैं ऑलमोस्ट 60% इस स्विंगिंग फेज में चला जाता है। सो जो इंजरी बायोमैकेनिक्स है, अब आता है इंजरी बायोमैकेनिक्स रिसर्चर्स यूज क्या करते हैं, प्रिंसिपल ऑफ बायोमैकेनिक्स टू एक्सप्लोर द मैकेनिज्म ऑफ फिजिकल एंड द फिजियोलॉजिकल रेस्पॉन्स टू द मैकेनिकल फोर्सेस। अब इंजरी अगर होता है, इट मींस इट इज अ रॉन्ग टेक्निक, रॉन्ग ट्रेनिंग, रॉन्ग एवरीथिंग, because virtue of which only you are facing the doctor. Agar accidental case है, sports injury, if it is due to accidental case, then it is tolerable. Otherwise, it is your problem. You have created that problem for the society. क्योंकि आप जानते हुए भी अनजान है या आप जानते नहीं, दोनों चीज। सो इसमें कौन कौन सी कॉमन इंजरीज होते हैं रनिंग में? इसमें होता है रनर्स नी। घुटने में कब होता है? या तो आप टोस को अंदर रखते हैं, बाहर रखते हैं, या एक्सर्ट ज्यादा करते हैं, तो 100% आपका रनर्स नी होगा। प्लीज डोंट आस्क क्वेश्चन इन द अबाउट द रनर्स नी टू मी। आई थिंक देयर आर लॉट ऑफ डॉक्टर्स हु आर एक्सप्लेनिंग द सेम कॉन्सेप्ट, so they are in a much more better position. Then it is called Achilles tendinitis, then shin splint, hamstring injuries, plantar fasciitis. So these all are due to your wrong running technique. तो ये जो इश्यूज आते हैं ये डॉक्टर्स डील करते हैं। अगर डॉक्टर फील्ड में आके देख लेते हैं कि आपका मूवमेंट, इफ ही नोज द बायोमैकेनिक्स, योर बॉडी मूवमेंट, देन ही कैन इमीडिएटली टेल यू कि हाँ ये किस कारण से तुम्हारा ये इश्यूज डेवलप हो रहे हैं। तो इसके लिए हम लोग क्या करते हैं, बायोमेकेनिकल लेबोरेटरी होते हैं जिसमें कैमरा फिट होते हैं, रनिंग कराते हैं, कराने के बाद उसको हम टेस्ट करते हैं उसको देखते हैं कि एग्जैक्टली किस पोजीशन पे तुम्हारा कहाँ जाके प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है। तो दिस इज द लेबोरेटरी टेस्टिंग। तो इस तरीके से और सारे ऐसे टेस्ट कर सकते हैं। देखिए ये टो को जैसे इन किया तो ये नी में प्लेटलर प्रॉब्लम आएगा ही आएगा, unless until you are tall. Then the common injuries, कुछ इंजरीज आपके जिम्नेशियम में होते हैं। जो इंजरीज होते हैं जिम्नेशियम में, जैसे एंकल, फुट एंड एंकल इश्यूज आता है, सेम एंकल, नी, शोल्डर, टिबिया, एवरी इंजरीज व्हिच आर अगेन द पुअर मूवमेंट। अगर आप प्लैंक लगा रहे हैं, आपका कमर नीचे झुक गया, unless until it is parallel to the head and the button, then it is wrong. आप देखिए, आप crunches सब लोग मारते हैं। If the crunches is, if you are bending the neck, then again it is a problem. If it is straight, it is perfect all right. There should not be any slouch movement of your back. पीछे हम लोग पुल नहीं करना चाहिए, शोल्डर को आगे रख के पीछे से पुल नहीं करना चाहिए। If you are doing it, it is wrong. So there are, or in deadlift also the same thing. If you are bending, if you don't keep your back straight, then there will be a problem. किसी ने unmute किया, please mute yourself. कोई participant, please mute yourself. So टेनिस another game जिसमें रोटेटर काफ टेंडिनाइटिस बहुत ज्यादा होता है, all because हम लोग क्या करते हैं, बैडमिंटन खेलते हैं एल्बो से, उसी सेम चीज को आप रिस्ट को रोटेट करते हैं। सो बिकॉज ऑफ दैट द रोटेटर कफ टेंडिनाइटिस आपका होता है, रिस्ट पेन होता है, बैक पेन होता है, नी पेन होता है, काफ एंड एचिलिस टेंडिनाइटिस होता है, टेनिस टो भी होते हैं। These all are again and again I am telling, these all are developing because of your poor biomechanics. आपका बॉडी मूवमेंट अगर ठीक नहीं है, then you face lot of issues. आप देख सकते हैं ये मूवमेंट जो कर रहे हैं, ये वीडियो को, now see if he has flexed the arm, ठीक है, here the problem is, so in this way we can really tell कि हाँ तुम्हारा ये आर्म को, एल्बो को बैंड नहीं करना, बैंड नहीं करके you play a little far from your body line. So but every skill अगर आप सिखाना चाहते हैं, then it is called the mental process. ये mental process is another chapter which needs a really a very thorough concept, because we everything planned or the signals comes from your brain to your effective muscles of the arms or the body. Thank you for your understanding. I'm Dr. Subir Debnath, and my contact number and mail is this. Over to Dr.
Anubala,
Vikram.
please.
If you have any question, you can ask. किसी का कोई सवाल है तो आप पूछ सकते हैं.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Please type in the chat box. Please type in the chat box.
Okay, sir, fine.
We are taking from the chat box, otherwise वो बहुत close हो जाता है. So you can directly read in the chat box.
There is a question, Abir Guha. If an athlete has tendency of planting foot side-wise, not on the toe or the heel, please suggest any biomechanical remedy, if any. See, gentlemen, it is again the plane and the axis. If he is deviating, then definitely he will be suffering from the sports injuries. 100% hoga. You have to stop. Initially, stop his original movement, then start the rehabilitation program by teaching very small movement, how to walk consciously initially, so that he starts stepping very straight and forward. Then only he can really improve upon. Thank you everyone for the good inputs. I think, Dr. Sir, if anyone wish to ask any, why the reason why not we can't rotate our neck? Dhananjay, I told you that the joint doesn't permit. So it's better if you rotate from one side to another and from the behind, back side to back side. Sir, what is the common injuries in Bioga? I don't know. I don't know the name. Sir, what is the common injuries in maybe yoga?
Yes.
See, in yoga, there is no any common injuries. There are lots of injuries which you are creating when in yoga. Actually, if you consider absolutely with the ethical way of doing the yoga, it is yam, niyam, and then ashan. Ashan is the static posture where there is less chance of any sports injuries. To me, if you go with any other dynamic movement, then there is a difference. Then you may suffer from any injury. Any more? Running, Jashoda Nan. Running करते नी का नीचे पेन आ रहा है. Any pain killer suggested?
So I think
again मैं बोल रहा हूँ, मैं पेन किलर देने के लिए नहीं आया, मैं आपका ट्रेनिंग टेक्निक को सही करने के लिए बोला. जो रनिंग टेक्निक है उसको आपको सही करना पड़ेगा. और पेन, अगर पेन है आपके, डेफिनेटली यू शुड सी अ डॉक्टर, गेट योर पेन बिन really addressed by a doctor, then come back. When you come, then you check all your components, all your motor components after strength, flexibility, everything you have to check. Then only you can return back to the session.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. Then Dr. Ravi Bhushan. If an athlete is facing frequent ankle sprain and twist, what could be the biomechanical reason for the same? See, gentlemen, if there is a twist or a sprain, I think you are, I don't know, you are a doctor. So, why it is twisting? You have to see the etymology. Agar aapka footwear is wrong, if your stretch, you are stretching like in basketball especially. There are a lot of ankle injury. In football, there are a lot of injuries. If the surface on which you are playing and if the shoes are not perfect, that may be one cause. If the strength of your ankle joint, हम लोग क्या करते हैं, ankle joint को कभी strengthening करते ही नहीं. Lower leg की exercise हम लोग calf के strengthening करते ही नहीं है. So अगर ये problem आता है तो definitely आपका twisting होगा. So उसके लिए last I think last to last day due to yesterday there was the same concept कि whether हम लोग क्रैप बैंडेज बांधे या नहीं. अगर आपका पेन है तो मेरे हिसाब से आप बिल्कुल ना खेले ना ही एक्टिविटी में जाए जब तक आपको डॉक्टर सर्टिफाइड फिट सर्टिफाइड नहीं करते हैं, सर्टिफिकेट नहीं देते, तब तक आप ग्राउंड में नहीं जाए तो ज्यादा अच्छा है. और आपको टेक्निक के ऊपर पूरा ध्यान लगा के आप कैमरा से आप फोटो ले लीजिए. लेने के बाद आप देख पाएंगे कि आपका एक्चुअल क्यों गलत मूवमेंट हो रहा है. After spending Dr. Lakwinder Kaur, I think after a long time spending in the basketball game, now I have knee problem when I am sitting for a long time. And okay, so Madam Lakbir, I think the small concept is I was also a player, so I was unable to move on my first floor house, all because there was a huge pain in the knee. The only problem is if you recollect, जब आप खेलते थे तो आपने क्वाड्रिसेप्स के लिए स्क्वाट खूब मारे होंगे. आपने कभी भी नी के पीछे सो कॉल्ड योर हैमस्ट्रिंग मसल्स या इनर एडक्टर्स या एडक्टर मसल्स, एबडक्शन और एडक्शन के लिए, और आपके जो श्वास मेजर एंड माइनर मसल्स है, श्वास मसल्स, इन सारे मसल्स के लिए आपको एक्सरसाइज करना पड़ेगा. आपका बेस्ट मेडिकेशन यही होगा, आपका लेग कर्ल कीजिए आप, लेकिन अगेन विद द एडवाइस ऑफ अ डॉक्टर और ए ट्रेनर हु नोज एंड अंडरस्टैंड. आप क्वाड्रिसेप्स अगर कर रहे हैं तो आपका हैमस्ट्रिंग कर्ल भी करना पड़ेगा. करने के बाद आप साइड लेटरल रेज या लेटरल स्ट्रेंथ ट्रेनिंग आपको करना पड़ेगा. देन देयर विल नॉट बी एनी प्रॉब्लम विद योर नी एंड आई एम 100% श्योर. If a javelin thrower with ubiquitous arm has more prone to throw elbow, why is that? See, it is I told one word. It is the individual difference. If the body posture is not permitting, or if the body posture is having some deformity, no one can help. Rather, one has to sustain with the same. Knee joint and lower leg does not work properly. Both the knee remains as bent as in the sitting position. See, madam, again you have to go for the strength training. Strength and flexibility goes side to continuously. If you miss any part, if your strength is missing, then definitely you cannot really increase, or you cannot increase the performance of your knee. आपका घुटना को ठीक रखने के लिए आपके मसल्स इंपॉर्टेंट है, घुटना का जॉइंट इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है. जॉइंट को तो बांध के रखते हैं आपके मसल्स, लिगामेंट्स एंड टेंडन्स. Nirupam Roy, I think we are towards the end. Sir, what are the stabilizers and neutralizer muscles of our body and how they act on our body movement? Nirupam Roy, I think you know the answer much better. Stabilizers are the muscles which really stabilize yourself. Like if I am raising the arm, there are certain stabilizer muscles which are stabilizing the movement. Otherwise, if a signal is coming from my brain, it will go up to my forehead. So those are the stabilizers. And when we are lifting the arm sideways, some neutralizer muscles are there, because when we are lifting on the sideways, it can go in front of you also. So those are the neutralizer muscles which the agonist muscles are helping to contract. The prime movers, जो प्राइम मूवर्स मूव करा रहे हैं उसको स्टेबल करते हैं पर्टिकुलर डिग्री, दैट इज कॉल्ड स्टेबलाइजर. और इसको अनवांटेड मूवमेंट्स को रोक के रखते हैं, दैट इज कॉल्ड न्यूट्रलाइजर मसल्स. Sir, please elaborate the cause or why we can't rotate, discuss. I think Dr. Bikram can tell. Please elaborate the cause of why we can't rotate the rotate. Discuss about the joint of the neck. Neck का जो joint है, why you don't go for advice for?
Subir ji, I think just we will take the relevant questions to you because uh, around 6 o'clock we are going to start with the Shrikant.
Yeah.
So whatever is relevant to you, you can please take.
Yeah, we can. I think so. Shall we end up?
No, you can take the questions. Still, we have some.
Yeah, while running, it is noticed that at least cross their legs from knee at the back. Suggest why, how to suggest way to rectify. While running, it is noticed at least cross the leg. Okay, again this Abid, the same. This is the same concept. If it is going towards a cross side, means that if your heel, the right heel is going to your left buttock, it means again your force is directing in a opposite counter movement. So if it is going on the other side, then definitely you will reduce your force और speed तुम्हारा घट जाएगा, क्योंकि it should be cycle. Like when we are pedaling in a bicycle, it is going straight and coming down. The running also should be a cyclic manner only. So you have to rectify. What is the reason behind this knee joint block? Madam, it is flexibility. If there is less of flexibility with your hamstring muscle, back muscle, then definitely it will be troubling you.
Subir ji, one thing related to you exactly.
Yeah.
Mr. Hafiz Abdur Rahman from Pakistan wants to ask, do you have any archery biomechanics video? So you may not be having any video, but you can say tell him.
If you can ask any question, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Videos are there. If you see the International Archery Federation, there are so many videos. There they explain. So
I think the other questions shall be taken in relevant section.
yeah.
Chaudhary sir wants to ask, I have pain in MCL. So there's no such pain in MCL. That can be on the medial side of knee. तो वो जब भी relevant section होगा वो सारे आपके सवाल लिए जाएंगे. आपसे related आपको कुछ लगता है तो you can.
एक फिर Nitin Patil, Achilles tendonitis is normal after rest, but it is running. It means suddenly what is the biomechanics? You haven't recovered, gentlemen. After recovery, you should go for some rehabilitative exercises. Exercise करने का pain कम होना is not the rehabilitation. After that, you should learn how to go for the strengthening of your ankle. Then there will not be any problem of your Achilles tendonitis. Medication is first, then rehabilitation is second, then followed by your training procedure, which should be step by step. Sir, do you have the archery biomechanics video on the side? No. Right at this moment I cannot share. It is there. It is available with the online. Sir, I have MCL. I don't know. In basketball, there is injury of ankle twisting, but how is paining in full leg? When there is a pain in any part of your leg, Dr. Lagdi, कहीं अगर आपका ट्विस्ट हुआ है, अगर पूरा पैर में पेन है, तो डेफिनेटली उस जगह का मसल्स भी रप्चर्ड है. तो I think doctors can tell you much better.
So I would like to add you that if there's a early return to sports without your proper recovery, so that is a cause of frequent ankle sprains and pain around the ankle. तो आपका कोई लिगामेंट वगैरह इंजर हुआ होगा और उसके लिए हम लोगों का एक सेशन है. डॉक्टर राहुल उपाध्याय वुड बी टॉकिंग ऑन एंकल स्पेन्स, तो उसके उस समय हम लोग बात कर सकते हैं. सो आई थिंक वी शैल गो अहेड.
Yeah, because it is over. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, once again for your patient hearing. And thank you, Dr. Bikramji. And obviously, you are doing a lot of work for this education part in India, I should say. Thanks.
Yeah, pleasure, Subirji, to have you here with us. And this was indeed a pleasure. And you have been always supportive for any kind of educational activities.
Thank you.
Dr. Shrikant, are you here with us in the room? Shrikant? Shrikant has entered the room already, but I think Subir, meantime you can take some other questions. Let me connect to Shrikant.
Okay, I think. How do different athletic shoes change the biomechanics of the foot? Yeah, gentleman रंजित सिंह जी, जो एथलेटिक शू है, हम लोग क्या करते हैं, शूज जब खरीदते हैं तो बड़ा चमकीला शूज हम खरीद लेते हैं, अच्छा लगा बहुत, देन तो हम लोग उसको खरीद लेते हैं. If you're going for a training, go for the training shoe. If you're going for a basketball, purchase the basketball shoes. Then there will not be any problem with your shoes, unless until if you are creating any trouble for yourself. Dr. Shrikant, if you can unmute, you are welcome. Dr. Vikram is waiting for you.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you are absolutely audible. Welcome.
Thanks
Dr.
a lot.
Vikram, please welcome him. Now, Dr. Vikram is muted himself. Dr. Vikram, please unmute yourself. Dr. Vikram, please unmute yourself.
Yes, Subir ji.
Yeah, श्रीकांत जी फिर म्यूट हो गए, ये क्या हो रहा है, आपका हैंग चल रहा है. श्रीकांत जी, please unmute yourself.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Absolutely fine.
So now we have Shrikant with us. Shrikant was online, just I have seen lost.
Yes, sir. I'm here, sir. I'm here.
Okay, great. Fine. So Shrikant, your camera is on. So ladies and gentlemen, now we have Shrikant Iyengar with us. And Shrikant is a very good speaker. He's a very learned physiotherapist. He has worked with men's hockey team. He was a physio with men's hockey team. And recently he has served Rajasthan Royals as a team physio. So very communicative guy, very humble one. So Shrikant, now all yours. And Shrikant would be speaking on long-term athlete development and the concepts of load bearing to avoid any kind of sports injury to the adolescent ones. So Shrikant, all yours.
Thank you so much, sir. Good evening, everybody. At the outset, thank you so much, Dr. Vikram. I think you and your team continues to keep all the efforts to create these educational programs, which is very, very good. And I feel humbled enough to be part of such endeavors from my end. Today, I'm going to speak about adolescent athletes and the long-term athlete development plan. As we are increasingly become an active society, I think we have got quite a large number of young athletes participating in sport. We also know that the society is becoming more and more physically active. So it's just become, it is imperative on all the health professionals' perspective. When I say health professionals, means physios, doctors, trainers, anyone and everyone who's involved with in the making of a ecosystem of sports and fitness in the society. I think it is becoming more and more imperative that we continue to become aware about managing these young athletes, as they are a resource for us for tomorrow, for the future. And it's not just about winning Olympic medals, but also creating a very strong society which is fit and healthy for them to be able to contribute to the best of their capacity for the nation building. All right, I'm just quickly going to share my screen. And if somebody can just give a thumbs up to see and tell me if they can see my screen. Can people see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much. So let's get going. All right. So what are the adolescent athletes? If you don't take anything from my talk today, but if you can just list down these 7 or 8 points, I think my job is done with the fullest of the justice. So the number one factor is young athletes are not young adults. They are individual entities. They are a very special group, and they are definitely not young adults. So we have to manage them very, very differently. We always have to understand that musculoskeletal age needs to be given precedence over the chronological age, or what we call as biological age. We always have to think beyond performance. That means at young age, at the age of 10, 12, 14, winning is not the only thing. We have to think about long-term athlete development of that athlete. All right, we definitely need to have a knowledge of development. That means at what stage, what athlete, what child can take up what kind of loads. It's very, very important for us to create a very good, appropriate coaching program. And when I say coaching, that means even the physios or trainers or doctors who are working with young athletes who prescribe them various kind of movements, they need to be aware of such endeavors. Okay, we have to be definitely inclusive of the athletes. That means we might think, 8 या 10 साल का बच्चा, what would he know about the overall plan? But you'll be surprised that if you include them, if you allow that democracy that they can come and express themselves more openly, you'll be more surprised that your program becomes far more refined and more robust. We also have to understand there are multifactorial reasons, right? That means it's not just physical, it's physiological, it's emotional, it's intellectual, it's psychological. So that means for one child, for him to become an athlete, there are a lot of variables which comes into play, and that is where the multi-model approach also comes. So unless until we are sensitive towards those multifactorial reasons, we'll never be able to create a multi-model approach. We always have to understand that the primary movement patterns like running, jumping, rolling, throwing, all of this will always be superior to sports specific skill. When I say superior, that means they would take precedence. For a child to be able to become a tennis player or a cricket player, he, rather than becoming specific or specialized to his sport, he needs to be aware of his overall body movement patterns, his technicalities. Can he run? Can he jump? Can he roll? So those primary movement patterns have always need to take a precedence over the secondary movement or a specialized movement patterns. The most important part is success at early stage does not guarantee success at senior level. That means if you have a child at 13, 14, 15, if he's doing really good, does not necessarily mean that at 18 or 19 he will be a world beater. So please be aware of, so if you can understand these points today, my job is pretty well done. Okay, so where did it all rise? How did it all happen? So after the Second World War, when the world was going through obviously the post-war devastation, and somewhere I think that there was the most civic sense in the society that look, we cannot go for any more war. But the whole factor of competitiveness and somebody being supreme to other had to be there. So the only thing kind of gave way was towards the supremacy in the sporting field. So, and especially countries like Eastern European countries like East and West Germany was battling for supremacy. There was small USSR back then. There was a one collective USSR. So they were trying to be supreme to each other. So that gave rise for early specialization. That means from 1950 to 1980, there were a lot of behind the curtain training, lot of early specialization start to happen. That means if we catch them young, we produce better results from the rest of the world. And then the rest of the world started to catch up with that kind of concept, right? So and then I'm sorry, and then obviously it was legacy. That means you had Tiger Woods winning his first championship when he was 6 years old, Andre Agassi playing his first tennis championship when he was 4, Martina Hingis winning her first championship when she was 8 years old. So all such successive stories of legacy kind of gave way for the thought process that the earlier a child starts training and becomes specialized, the better the chances of results. So that gave for a lot of legacy, and that legacy resulted into a lot of thought process. So what it meant that if you lead, what leads to early specialization, that means you obviously start training sooner, you become single focused towards playing one sport, you continue to keep training year the round. That means you're playing same sport for almost 8 to 10 months in a year. There is very serious organized way of training. That means at 6 and 7, the child is not just playing for fun, he's actually playing for more serious, organized, structural manner. And then it leads to production of baby champion. So that was the whole concept which started to give way for the early specialization part of it. Now, what does early specialization does? So that it was a belief system that the foundation and the values and attitudes and belief system can be imbibed very soon. If you catch them early, you train them young, then they can start to be very different to the rest of the cohort. They also started to give way to the belief that delay may lead to poor skill development. That means the later you are into taking up a sport, the poorer you will be in playing that sport in a better capacity. And then early sport provides greater chances of success. That means the earlier you take up a sport, the chances of you becoming better in that sport for far too long is greater. And then it was acquisition of expert performance. So a very good psychologist from Europe, Mr. K. Anders Ericsson did a very good research between 1992 to 1994. And he did a thing from the British Society of Violinists. And he said that the people who ended up becoming legendary violinists were the ones who kept 10,000 hours of training behind them. And that was more to do with deliberate practice. That means there was no more fun. Everything what was done was all very serious, very deliberate, and they were doing it for the reason of becoming specialists. So that kind of gave way for them to start, that gave belief that the earlier you start a sport, or that was kind of a philosophy what was very much adopted immediately into the sport without thinking that maybe violin was one skill-based acquisition thing, but anything to do with sport also requires your physicality, requires psychological preparation, requires technique, requires skill. So there were a lot more variables, but people just copied that into the world of sport, and that became a phenomena for us to follow in the today's world. So the Association of Orthopedic and Sports Medicine in USA gave a very good consensus statement in 2012. So the consensus was basically that there are 3 basic points to understand what is the definition of early specialization. So number 1 factor was participation in intensive training and or a competition in organized sport greater than months. Means if you play if you play only one sport, or you keep training, or you compete in one particular sport for equal or more than 8 months, you are specializing in one sport. Okay, participation in one sport to the exclusion of participation in other sports. That means if you play only football and you don't play anything else, okay, you're specializing in that sport. And number 3 factor is involving pre-pubertal. That means before 7th grade, or roughly at the age of 12-year-old, that indirectly means that you are specializing. So these 3 points were very strong point as a consensus statement, which was given by the American Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Society for them to start understanding the nature of what early specialization means, right? Now, obviously there are a lot of advantages, but there was also some downside to it. So what were the risks involved? Number 1 factor was early peaking. That means you could be less consistent performance. You start to become very good too soon, but as the competition increases, you are not that consistent enough, and then you start to go downhill. Number 2 is greater risk of overuse injuries. You are trying to devote too much too soon. There's a lot of factors which starts to play into the athlete's or child's mind. He cannot cope up with the pressure. He starts to go into the burnout phase. And then it may inhibit overall movement and skill development. That means if you're not giving certain factor for the motor and cognitive skills to develop optimally, you are actually inhibiting a lot of other development, what actually should be the positive side of a sport. Now, obviously, we all know what is happening with adolescent participation. It's getting increasingly popular. More and more parents want their child to play a sport, right? It's becoming very, very, it is giving grounds for early specialization into a very early stage. We see the successful cricketers today. We see successful athletes today. They go on to make serious careers. So parents start to take that as a very serious element for the child to take up a sport in a very early stage, and purely specialization in terms of making that as a career, no more as actually a way to kind of enjoy or have fun or try and becoming more active in life. So that's why it is imperative for all of us today in this platform to understand the specific physiological characters. What does it takes to create a very good program around a young athlete, right? So what is the evidence? So National Collegiate Athletic Association is NCAA is a very big association. For last 40 years, they've done some extremely great body of work in America for their athletic development. And they have come out with a very strong validation that this paper was published in 2015, that there was a very strong association of early sports specialization and high training volume with injury rates. That means the athletes who were specializing too soon and the volume of training was very high, they ended up getting far more injured in the later stages of their life in comparison to the counterparts who actually started sport participation a little later in the life, right? So now the other side of the argument are these legends. Jonty Rhodes played hockey for his country while he was playing, while he ended up playing cricket in the later stage for his country. AB de Villiers, great cricket player, we all know him, but was actually a very sound rugby player in the formative years of his life. The great wall of the country, Mr. Rahul Dravid, who was a great cricketer, started off his life as while he was playing cricket, for his school, he was also playing field hockey. And the love of football with our great MS Dhoni, everybody knows about that factor. So the other side of the argument is, there are some legendary athletes who actually have made bigger marks by participating in more sport than one in the early years of life. Right. So now when I keep saying young athlete, what is the uniqueness of young athlete? Why it is so special for us to know the understanding of this? So first thing first, engaging in sports in adolescence have health benefits. It's greatly rewarding for a child to play sport at the early stage of his life. Right. But because they are young and they are playing sport, they're also vulnerable for injuries due to growth processes. They're not physically or mentally or psychologically completely matured. So the chances of them getting injured is far more higher. Now, the injury risk factors are very unique to this age group. So somebody who's 20-year-old, he may not counter that kind of injury because of the load, what a 12-year-old child would be. So that's why the first point, that they are not mini adults. We need to really treat them very uniquely. So let's try and go towards a little bit of detailing and understanding what uniqueness is there in their body patterns. So first thing is non-linearity of growth. That means their body segments do not grow proportionately. When the child is, for the first 4 years, your head and skull is bigger. And by the time you reach 10 and 12, your long bones grow faster, but the muscles are trying to just follow the length of the long bones. So that means that until the child reaches its puberty, the growth is in a very non-linear manner. It's not like it's like one tangential graph. Then the second factor is maturity associated variation. That means if you look at the similar set of boys of 12 or similar set of girls in the same cohort of 13, all of them will be different in size, height, weight, dimensions, just because every single child grows in a different manner depending upon his genetic predisposition, depending upon his nutritional component, depending upon general environmental factors. And all of this interplay are very important for a certain child to be in a certain maturity status. Right? There's also factors related like adolescent growth spurt. They can hit growth spurt at 13, they can hit growth spurt at 16. So that there is a variability around that also. And then there's a unique response to skeletal injury. That means if the bones are brittle, if you start to load them too much, the green stick fractures, that means how the green stick breaks, that similar kind of injury can happen to the young child. They also have immature or underdeveloped coordination. Because their motor and cognitive skills are not very well developed, the chances of them getting injured because of the poor coordination is extremely high. If I can't see how fast the ball is coming to me while I'm batting, there are high chances that I might get hit by the ball because my skills are not very well developed. So that's why poor skills and perceptions also are extremely important for us to consider. And then more frequent and intense training competition. We end up loading too much. They consider thinking that they are just children, they can take up the load, and in the long run, they actually break down. So that's a uniqueness of the young athlete, which we need to be extremely careful about. So just to give you some numbers, right? There more than 50% of registered football players in the world are below the age of 18 years. That means in the whole of the world, people who are playing football, half of the population is less than 18. And this equates to approximately 150 million players in the world. Just imagine 2 injuries per year with that one athlete becomes 300 million football related injuries alone in one particular sport. So just imagine the magnanimity of the menace what we're looking and what we are going to be encountering, right? And it is really becoming an epidemic now, because in last 10 years, the athletic injuries have gone from 500% to 700%. That means one child is getting injured 7 times in a year at least in last 10 years. And 1.35 million a year of serious sports injuries. When we say serious, that means it requires medical attention. They need to see a doctor or a physio or a specialist to be able to help them. And the biggest factor is the overexposure injuries in youth sports are on the rise constantly. It just continues to keep becoming bigger and bigger. So that is a matter of concern for us, because 77% of the parents across the globe express concern over the children's sports injury, right? And 47% of the coaches say they cannot focus enough on injury prevention. Either they do not have sufficient time, or they do not have sufficient skill sets, or they do not have the professionals around them to be able to manage something like that. So what is the key aspects to consider here? I keep saying maturity, biological maturity, biological maturity to let's say skeletal maturity. What does exactly it means? So the simple factor to understand the maturity status is the status of his skeletal age at that point of time. So just to give you an example, you can take a group of 13-year-old boys, everybody across probably a football team, 18 of them, all of them will not be in a similar skeletal age. Some of them will already be matured enough to be qualifying to be playing in 15 age category because they are early maturers. They have matured too soon, so their skeletal age is already 15. So practically they are doing injustice to play in under 13 level for themselves also, and also the players who are playing in that age group. Now, there could be some late maturers who would be in that 13 age group, but their bone maturity status is of 11-year-old. Now, that one boy, there are 2 or 3 very key factors, and please listen with a lot of attention here. If that boy is late maturer, he will be physically less strong. He will not be able to cope up with the training loads. That means he can either break down due to injuries, or he may not be technically as strong as somebody who's already 15 in skeletal age. That means the chances of that boy qualifying for the next stage of 13, 14, 15 is not there, because we're going to deselect him considering that he's not a good enough player. Now, what happens in the long run, that 11-year-old boy, the 13-year-old boy who's 11 in skeletal age, possibly will keep getting better, and by 16 or 17, when he's actually matured completely, may be a better player than the boy who's already matured his capacity by 15. And that's why majority of the time, lot of young proteges, you see that somebody is extremely good in 13, 14, 15. By the time they reach 19, 20, they've faded away. Just because they were extremely good in 15, they were playing in wrong age group. So now a very important information. A simple left hand x-ray, okay, if you can do before the age of 16, you have 98.9% specificity of identifying a skeletal age of a child. If you do it in 13, 14, 15, and the radiations are so minimal, anybody can say, no, it could be harmful. The radiations are so minimal that if you do 4 times in a year also, it'll still be in the less harmful stage. I would not like to dwell more into it. It's just an information that if anybody wants to know what is the way, a left hand x-ray to be done before the age of 16 could be a very good predictor for you to tell the musculoskeletal age of an athlete. That is one way. Now even a lot of international federations are utilizing that skill set to identify the real age of a child. Now when you say real age, it may be that really child is a 15-year-old, but because his bone is grown for 17, FIFA at least have come to the point, that means Federation of International Football Association has come to a very strong consensus that they are only going to keep the definition of an age will be the skeletal age, no more the biological age. So please understand this concept very, very clearly. The second factor is the maturity timing. That means at what age the peak height velocity was attained by a child. That is a very important predictor for you to understand that he's maturity or not, he's attaining maturity or not. And in case of girl, age at menarche. So that age of menarche can vary from very, very differently. So you have to be extremely, extremely sensitive enough, even while going to such details, that you cannot be just blindly following a certain training program for anyone and everyone. So this slide was very important for me to take some time for you to give the concept. If you understand this, the whole crux of my talk is done and dusted then. All right. Now injuries, once you understand of it, you will clearly resonate with this slide that injuries are not just bad luck. They just don't happen because of no reason, right? There was a lot of sequencing that why injuries are happening at a young age. So if I can just tell you a simple balancing point will be training load versus capacity to handle load. If you certain load is been put, if the child is able to take up the training load, it's all good. The moment the training load goes higher than the capacity to handle the training load, the body goes into the breakdown point, and that's when the injury starts to happen. Now, it's a very good and easy thing to say, but it's a remarkable effort from a team of people, team of professionals to come down to this point that what is a real balancing point, right? So just to give you a basic understanding of what is the reason for the risk of injuries, what are the different factors, multifactorial reason. One is the training and competition load. You cannot train 8 weeks or 10 weeks heavy loading and then go on to play another 4 weeks of competition. So you need to be absolutely vigilant. how much is the competition load? What sequence of matches are you playing? What is the kind of level of training required? That means also you can't be preparing for a 3-week competition, training only for a week. So a very balancing point needs to be thought upon in terms of training and competition load. Second factor is the competition schedule. Most often than not, the young athletes during, they are either playing too many matches on a Saturday, Sunday, or the matches can get crammed up during the summer holidays or during the Diwali vacations. So we really have to be very careful as authorities, as people who are involved in various levels, that we have to be sensitive enough that we're giving sufficient recovery time for the child for him to recover from one match to another match. Then the training schedule. You can't have morning, evening, 4 hours of training sessions. You have to be absolutely vigilant that these children are also going to school. They also have some other things happening in their life. In that way, how can we fit in the training schedule so that it doesn't become a negative effect for them? Rather, we can kind of fit in a very robust physical training program along with everything else what is happening in their life. The next factor is the lifestyle and well-being. If the child is having some problem in his home, it could be examination time. Maybe there's something going on with the parents. Maybe there's somebody bullying him in the school. Maybe the teacher is not respecting him. The coach is not trying to give him due diligence. All those factors can play a lot into his mind, and that could be enough for him not to be able to take up a physical load. We might keep grieving that why this boy is not improving, but maybe psychologically he's going through some other challenges. So it's very, very important that we don't overlook such factors, and we have to be aware of all those multifactorial reasons for us to keep a good template for our child to play a sport. And then the other factors could be obviously his interest in the sport. Is parent pushing him, or is he wanting to do it? Is he wanting to just play because everybody in the group is playing, so he's also playing? Is he just wanting to play because he doesn't want to attend tuitions in the evening, so it's much rather good to come and play cricket in the evening? So all those factors we need to be aware, and you can only know that unless until you build up a good relationship with them, that they have trust onto you, they respect you, they see you as role models, and all of that can only happen once they feel secured in your environment. Once I know that I will be well taken care of, I can confide with a lot of confidential information within my network then, right? And that network could be physios, doctors, coaches, anyone and everyone who's working with them. So now what are the, so things like this can be very good. We all as physios, or doctors, we've been using visual analog scale for donkeys of years. Similarly, activity ladder can be created. It could be a simple Excel sheet. It could be drawing boards. It could be color codes. That means, how was your training session last day? So before I start a training session, I always ask my athlete, how are you feeling today? Did you sleep well? Have you had sufficient food to eat? Are you feeling motivated to train today or not? Is there anything else which I would like to know? So I just keep the sequencing of order every single session. I keep that factor going, because, and that last point, that would I need to know anything else, is a very open-ended question. So that if the child is feeling something, he can just open up to me. And then based upon that, I keep marking that. And at the end of the week, I have a very strong Excel sheet to tell me that is this child or athlete going towards a overtraining phase, or is he actually under training also? Because sometimes under training also is the equal point, that probably in a team of 20, you may not be able to give attention to everybody. So maybe one boy is doing too much, and on the other side, the other boy is actually not doing sufficient enough. So things like this, an activity ladder could be a good key metric for you guys to objectively make a good training plan. Now, how do you then manage the situation? The moment you start to see that something is going downhill, you're trying to see that something on the red zone has started to come, please take up responsibility and act fast. That means activity modification, keep going up and down. 1 week high load, 1 week low load, 1 week high load, 1 week low load. Near the competition, 2 weeks before high load, 1 week before taper it down, allow him to recover and rest. The moment you can do this spurt of moment decisions, which could be week by week, if you can plan up yourself well, and you can communicate that to the child also in a very professional manner, then the right side of the graph can easily be attained. And obviously, we'll not always have like this. No training cycle in the world, be it in an Olympic athlete also, cannot be like this. Has to be a certain peaking point, and then you need to give a recovery point. That's why post-Olympics, post-World Cup, World Championship, any top level athlete needs to go through a resting phase, because he can't keep pushing himself every single day. So now, before I go into the next, as in the continuation of LTAD, very strong slide. And this, in fact, People would have attended my lectures in the past, and I always make a point in such lecture to show this one slide, because Dr. Jan Ekstrom is like a god of like a football medicine in the world. And he, after doing a very elaborate studies of 36 elite teams, I'm not even talking about young teams, 36 elite teams in 17 different countries, they have come out with this groundbreaking paper in 2016. It is in an open access in BJSM, that how strong correlationship exists between the coach's leadership style and the injuries. That means that the coach is leader. If he's trying to see a value in a child's or an athlete's life, the chances of the injury is far more lesser. Whereas the coach is constantly being mean, he's not being sensitive. If it's only about pushing a child or an athlete, then the chances of the athlete becoming injured is far more higher. And mind you, I keep saying coaches, but anyone who's working with a child, be it a physio or a doctor, is in the similar bracket of being a coach. So please be aware that your mannerisms, your intellectual capacity, the way you carry yourself is extremely important for the child to start having faith in you as a person who you are, right? That also goes down in terms of whatever you are saying. If I don't want to my child or my athlete to take sugar in his diet, I can't be eating jalebi every day in front of him. So if you cannot imbibe those principles, please don't thrust onto the child. And if you want to really create a good, valuable network within your own system, then you need to live by the day, every single day of your life, to be a role model. So please, that if that one principle comes to us, all of us will be successful in trying to create a very good program. Now let's go to the next thing about what exactly is long-term athlete development plan. Okay, I'll try to keep it very simple for people to understand this. This is a framework for optimal loading, competition, and recovery schedule. How do we get a child into a particular system of physical activity? How do we train him? How do we prepare him for competitions? How do we make him a champion? And then how do we take him, prepare him for the next phase of life, which is post sport career? So it was developed by Canadian long-term athletic expert group. That was some really good body of work was done by that group. A lot of research-based, a lot of evidence-based ideas were thrown in. And then came a word which was called as physical literacy. Simply put, physical literacy is like ABCD, learning those numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 in early formative school years. That means any child who wants to be physically active or play any sport, he needs to learn to do running, he needs to learn to do jumping, he needs to learn to do throwing. So those basic primary movement patterns need to be taught for the child to be literate enough to take up physical activity. Then it was to ensure fundamental skills were really well established prior to the age of 12 years, right? That was the whole goal of long-term athlete development. So what exactly what does it encompasses, right? So around it, the US Olympic team did 3 Olympic cycle training research on 3 Olympic cycle, which is 82, 1988, 1988 Seoul Olympics, 1992 Barcelona Olympics, and 1996 Atlanta Olympics. These 3 Olympic cycles were really strongly assessed. Okay, now they came out with a model that it takes 8 to 12 years of training to reach an elite level, right? 0 to 13 years for making to the Olympics. So when you just come to play for India, but around 8 to 12 years of age. By 0 to 13 is what you make it to the Olympic cycle. And almost 0 to 13 to almost 15 years it takes for one to win a medal. So that's the kind of graph we are talking about to create a very strong plan for you to succeed in a given situation. So that's very important to understand. If this is really like a template for all of us to be like an eye opener for us to understand that you cannot win Olympic medal in 6 months as much as you would like to train, right? And so what exactly is the goal of LTAD? It is to establish a core set of motor skills. Your running, jumping, your ability to perceive a certain speed. How do I change my direction? All that core set of motor skills needs to be well established. And ideally before 12 years, because that's where averagely you start to attain puberty. And that's where your motor skill starts to diminish. So it also aims in establishing a positive relationships to physical activity. Allow the child to start appreciating being physically active. If you make it too troublesome, he will never adopt physical activity forever in his life, because he's carrying a very wrong emotions or a wrong memory within himself. It is also to aid or improve motor and cognitive skills within a child's system, And then it also aims in improving the longevity and quality of life. Winning an Olympic medal could be one part of it. We know that thousands of athletes will play sport, but one of them will go on to win. But that doesn't stop us that all the thousands of athletes who are playing sport, they should have at least have a longevity of life and good quality of life. That's a very important part to be understood. So what exactly the 9 steps of this framework? It starts with an active start. That means the child need to start playing. Then you have to create a fundamental of the child. Then you have to teach him to learn to train. Then it goes to train to train. Then it goes to learn to compete. Then it goes to train to compete. Then learn to win, winning for a living, and active for life. So all these 9 cycles, I will just go briefly each one so that it is not a confusing factor for you. I understand in the first time it could be overwhelming, but one by one, I'll go each step for you, everybody to understand exactly how it is. So the stages, stage 1, it is active stage. That means it starts at around 0 to 6 for males, 0 to 6 for females. It just means you are taking a child to the ground, to the park, to the playing field every day, and he's just enjoying physical activity and just running around, jumping, playing. It just becomes a part of his daily routine of his life. He's learning, running, throwing, jumping, wheeling. There is no organization, there is no structure, there is no coaching. There is somebody just supervising that. He's just running and jumping, and nobody tells him what needs to be done. But that needs to be started at the earliest. The earlier it gets, the better it becomes. The overall program becomes very good. Now the stage 2 is fundamental stage 1. That starts around 6 to 9 in males, 6 to 9 in males, 6 to 8 in females. This is where ABCs, that means agility, balance, coordination, this is where it starts to be introduced. And this is where the physical literacy program is instilled for the first time. Now this needs to be minimum for 60 minutes, one session, for 3 to 4 sessions per week. I'll repeat, it should be minimum of 60 minutes of one session, 3 to 4 sessions per week for it to be qualified for creating a good fundamental stage. The coaching part could be compromised. That means you could have a coach or may not also have a coach. If the coach is there, he's just going to create environment where all those agility, balance, coordination part is done by the child by himself, not really by a regimental way. They jump or do. You don't give any instructions. You just create a nice environment by keeping hurdles, by keeping sand pits. They just do the things by themselves. So that's where some kind of supervision starts to happen here. Now the stage 3 is learning to train stage. Now this is a very formative stage where the basics of any particular sport can be given to them. So for males, it's 9 to 12. For females, it's 8 to 11. Now this is where agility, balance, coordination can be enhanced. Now the coaching comes into play. Now you want them to understand how fast to run, how do you change direction, how does it take to jump, what it is high knee, what it is to roll, how it is to throw. All of that starts to happen here. But we also integrate not just the physical component, but also the mental, cognitive, emotional component here. We start to create a small environment of competition within the group without any prizes, but just the competition that, listen, it is hard to lose. It is hard to push yourself. All those things, that cognitive and emotional abilities need to be instilled now at this stage, right? Now, stage 4 is training to train stage. This is where the engine is built. Now, this is where the males are between 12 to 16. You're physically matured. You've done the fundamentals right. Females are 11 to 15 based upon when they attain the menarche. The objective is really to strongly create endurance, strength, and speed. No matter what sport you're taking. Obviously, this doesn't apply to a sport like chess. But I'm saying any sport which involves any involvement of physicality, endurance, strength, and speed needs to be built upon based upon the agility, balance, coordinations, what you've attained in last 2 or 3 stages. Now, this is where athletic specific skills and fitness are inculcated. Now you want him to be a javelin player, you want him to be a fast bowler, you want him to be a badminton player. All of that sports specific training start strongly in this factor. Now, this is where in this stage, he still continues to take one more sport as a part of hobby. But that sport could be complementary to each other. So for example, if a badminton player is playing and the nature of the sport is obviously jumping, agility, it's a wooden-based sport, wooden-based court where he plays. Now for him to instill a little bit of, let's say, a teammanship and also to kind of keep doing a similar pattern of movement, the boy could be playing basketball once in a week on Sunday afternoon. That means he also has fun with the boys. The court, the real basketball court is wooden. He's jumping, he's landing, the agility and the flexibility are similar. So that sport becomes complementary. It could be vice versa. You could be a part of a team network like basketball, but in all 6 of them should take up responsibility within themselves. So once in a week, the boy or a girl plays badminton, because one, you learn to take ownership of your own self. In my position, I need to be independent and I need to be responsible. Also, he starts enjoying the individuality of a certain other sport. So that's how you make a complementary pattern between one sport to another sport. Now going to the next stage is stage 5. This is where learning to compete happens. This is where challenges of competition starts to happen. So the males are between 16 to 18. The females are between 15 to 17. Okay, this is where we introduce event-specific protocol. School championships, state championships, national championships, Khelo India. All of this starts to happen here at around 16 to 18 age groups. This is where the strength and weaknesses are actually derived. We start to understand the child or the athlete is good here, he lacks here, and it is very important to implement event specific area specialization. That means which competition are you preparing for? Okay, is it national championship, it is a district championship, or it is a school championship? Are you playing in Nagaland, or you are playing in Kashmir, or you're playing in Rajasthan, or you're playing in Gujarat, right? Are you playing in the day? Are you playing in the night? Is it winters? Is it summers? All that different variables starts to come in this stage now. It starts to become serious now, right? Now stage 6 is where training to compete starts to happen, heat of the battle, right? Now you are already grown, 18 to 21 for the males, 17 to 21. Look, all these are plus minus numbers. I'm not saying that it has to be like that way, but it is a plus minus numbers. Females 7 to 21, it is where optimization of event specific preparation happens. They start to go to optimal preparation starts to happen for the specialization and for the specific preparation. It is where the refinement of event specialization happens. I'm going for the World Cup, I'm going for the Olympics. How do I register my whole plan? How do I create a periodization cycle? It all starts to happen here, right? And that's where we continue to, even if it becomes serious, we do not let go of the integration of the physical, mental, cognitive, and emotional aspect. In fact, at this stage, the emotional and cognitive aspects needs to be more taken care, because the pressure mounts completely very at a different level now. From the factor of playing for fun, it becomes playing for a living now almost at this stage, right? Now stage 7 is learning to win. This is where the consistency of a performance is sought from an athlete. The males could be between 20 to 23, females could be between 20 to 23. This is where the maximization of high performance starts to happen. We start to introduce a formal performance enhancement team. That means coach comes into play, assistant coach comes into play, physio, trainer, masseurs, nutritionist, sports psychologist, anyone, podiatrist, anyone who could add on to the high performance environment comes into the play now, right? The whole idea is to learn to compete when it counts. How I could be doing everything right in last 4 years. On the day of my Olympic final event, if I'm not prepared to the best of my capacity, that's of no use now. So that's why it is really learning to make it happen when it counts the most. This is where what high performance environment comes to play. And then stage 8 is winning for a living. I'm already a professional athlete. Everything revolves around that particular sport. It could be anyone and anyone before, about males 20, females 23 and above. Most important objective, maximize event specific preparation, Olympics, world level, professional leagues, all of that starts to come here. You are absolutely dealing with 100% like a professional athlete. He cannot be a recreational athlete, because this is purely high performance professional athlete who plays that sport and makes a living out of it. And then most importantly, stage 9, it is active for life. Now this needs to be understood. This could be either for an athlete who goes on to play for 30, 35, 40 odd years, and then the integration of the athlete into the society happens. Or it could be a child who played a sport at 15, 16. Then he obviously had to choose another career pathway. He went on to become a lawyer or a doctor or somebody else, and then after 20 years, he wants to come back to, come back to that sport. He wants to have a healthy living. He wants to maximize his physical capacity at that age. It could mean even for him. That's why I said, if you start the fundamentals well, even if you don't play a sport for next 15, 20 years, you can always be active for life at this stage also. So it could be any age, right? And the whole important factor is to make preparation for integration into society. How do I be a part of community? How do I make a good living for myself? How do I feel more motivated physically, emotionally, everything. So basically just trying to make more sense of living a good quality of life. So that's where basically the whole summary can be said in this one, right? I mean, the whole idea of LTAD is to produce athletes who reach their full athletic potential, as well as experience success against competitors from around the globe. So when you say full athletic potential is very individual. I am in my best capacity, want to be the best. And if I can follow an LTAD model, that can help me to achieve that. So what is the summary? Effective coaching happens when training is appropriate. The majority of the time that the problem of injury is the training, actually nothing else. So if you train it well, the injury doesn't happen and the optimization of the program happens to the best of its level. Assessing maturity status is the very important factor in creating any informed training program. Results in junior program may not absolutely be replicable at senior level. So we should not get carried away by a child who is showing promise at 13, 14. Because the moment we start to become too enthusiastic, we start to push them too much too soon, and they start to become problematic. Training should be progressive, adequate, targeted to develop multi-skills. We need to ensure that every single component of the physical and motor skills development is taken care while the child is taking up a sport. And biological developments of youth athletes are not just physical, but it also could involve behavioral, psychological changes. So please be sensitive that it's not just the physical loading, it could be emotional or psychological barrier also, which is causing some trouble into the overall program for an athlete to be able to compete to the best of his capacity or even participate to the best of his capacity. So if you can take these 3 points, my job is practically done. Let the fun element continue to be alive. Do not take the fun part even at the highest level. If you're working with an athlete, the most important part is the enjoyment of the sport. That should not become a pain for them. That's where the whole thing starts to fail. Physical literacy is the key. If you teach a child to jump, to learn, to roll, to throw, if all those fundamental skills are done well, it's actually the physical literacy is really formed well. Anything and everything is possible later stages of life. And please don't get carried away only by the sporting achievements. Quality of life is as crucial as winning Olympic medals or World Cup championships or any sporting triumphs. So yeah, thank you so much. I hope it wasn't. I hope it was of some value to you guys. I hope it wasn't too long or boring. So thank you so much for all your attention. These are some references. And yeah, if anybody's got any question, I'm happy to answer. I'll stop sharing now and then I can take the questions.
Sir, good evening.
Please type the question in the chat box.
Okay, sir.
Because otherwise multiple people can keep speaking and.
Sir, when there is no one, then I can ask now.
Okay, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Iyengar sir, I just want to ask you one thing, that you have segregated the ages now, ki 0 to 6 and 6 to 8 and all these. So my question is like, females we have in females we have a menses thing. So somebody says कि हाँ इस time पे practice करना चाहिए, somebody says कि नहीं करना चाहिए. So what should be the correct thing कि हमें करना चाहिए या नहीं करना चाहिए?
Thank you so much for asking a brilliant question. It is definitely a matter of intention. So what ma'am is asking is basically when there's a period cycle going on of females in athletic population, the whole idea is that there's all myths around, should we train or shouldn't we train? Ma'am, this is with all the evidence-based research, I can tell you that there is no proper concrete evidence to say that there should be any reduction in training volume. It all depends upon individual athlete to another athlete. Some generally female athletic population, they react differently to different situation. But as much as it is physical, this one philosophy that you shouldn't train kind of give rise to a fear of avoidance of training during that time. So the most important thing is जब हम training cycle में हमको ये बार-बार reiterate नहीं करना है athlete के सामने, you don't create a psychological barrier in their mind कि actually अगर तकलीफ ना भी हो तो वो बच्चा नई ट्रेनिंग कर रहा वो नहीं होना चाहिए. So the best answer is case to case लेना है. It's completely safe. Physiological and systemic wise is completely safe for the child to compete, even train or do whatever if they are comfortable enough. Having said that, You can't expect that to happen suddenly on a competition अगर आपने उसको ट्रेनिंग ठीक से नहीं किया है. तो अगर मैं वापस बताऊं तो मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज ट्रेनिंग फेज में धीरे धीरे लोड डेवलप करिए. मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंटली साइकोलॉजिकल बैरियर निकालिए और वो मिथ्स नहीं डालना है, बार बार की ट्रेनिंग नहीं करना है. ठीक है. आई होप आई हैव आंसर्ड योर क्वेश्चन टू द बेस्ट ऑफ माय कैपेसिटी.
Yes, definitely, sir. And it will be varying case to case. If you want to train, it's okay. If you don't want to train, it's okay. You can take rest. And especially, we don't have to create barriers. कि नहीं आपको नहीं करना चाहिए, नहीं करना चाहिए. Such kind of barriers.
1992 में there was a very important paper which came out which suggested about, I'll give another example of how rural areas female during the cyclic months they go on to do work in the farming land because that's the only way they can feed their child. Not one day of absenteeism was found between 1992 to 1995 in that research. Whereas in urban areas, because you had government jobs or private companies where you could take sick leave, the absenteeism was more in those urban females because so that's what I'm trying to say, that if you look into the thing, if you're playing an Olympic final, on that day the athlete will do whatever is required, right? But if it's just a training thing, and if I've been told constantly, अगर मेरे को ये शुरुआत से बोल दिया गया कि training नहीं करना है, so the chances of me not training is very, very high. So your belief system makes a lot of difference in the whole situation. Okay, I hope I have given you a little bit of perspective around.
नहीं, very good, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. And इसी तरह सर जैसे I'm right now I'm practicing yoga. I'm practicing a yoga course. So I just want to ask you कि ये योगा कोर्स में जैसे हम बोलते हैं सूर्य नमस्कार जो है वो प्रेगनेंसी टाइम पे नहीं करना चाहिए, फॉरवर्ड बेंडिंग वगैरह नहीं करना चाहिए. बट अभी लास्ट फ्यू मंथ्स में मैंने करीना का वीडियो देखा, उसमें भी वो कर रही है, और अनुष्का शर्मा का देखा, वो भी कर रही है. मतलब some kind of ये myths हैं हमारे
It
बीच में.
depends on stage of pregnancy and multiple more things. So
I think ma'am this ये थोड़ा सा आप ये question इस domain में ना करें because it could have a bigger implications. The best thing is to go through a gynecologist and then get the best of the information. That will be my suggestion, ma'am. Let's not generalize things, ma'am, please.
Shrikant, we have a next question. Luke Leon Korean wants to ask. First, a compliment, really great class. And question is, what is the strength training recommendation for adolescents? So
again, an excellent question because a lot of myths are there. Again, this is where the skeletal maturity comes into play. If you are aware of what skeletal maturity the child is, there is again no evidence to say that the strength, when we say strength, everything starts to be replicated to the whole implication go towards lifting of the weights in the gym. Strength could be your own body lifting, as in you sit to stand, you do push-ups, you do pull-ups, it could be strength building. Resistance training, any form of resistance training, swimming, taking a band, okay, just simply climbing on the trees, all of this could be resistance training and strength building. So the moment the child reaches around 9 to 10, some kind of strength needs to be imbibed in the child's program, which will be very much dependent upon his ability to take up that physical load. Just to give you a little bit more perspective, go back to your simple physics classes. Newton's third law of motion. Every action has equal and opposite reaction. अगर एक 40 किलोग्राम का बच्चा 10 साल का अगर जमीन पे पांव रखता है, the ground is also giving him ground reaction forces equal opposite, right? Now just imagine if the child has to run every single time for next 5 kilometers or let's say 2.5 kilometers. For 2.5 kilometers, the ground reactions are working forcefully inversely onto his joint. So do you not think that he needs to be strong enough to take that 40 kilograms of weight coming into his joint? So if you understand that basic philosophy, then we will never ask this question. Obviously, we will not be able to load him with, let's say, 100 kilograms of a squat, simply because he can't take it. So the answer is the resistance training is required, but what kind of form you're taking, that is the most important thing. But the bottom line, please let your maturity stage be your marker for this thing. Thank you. If I just find the sequence where it is, I can go one by one quickly. Because
Jayavrata Ghosh was pending.
So I will, okay, I'll just, I think, where do you prevent? So this is what, I think 1 second. There are a lot of questions for Subir, sir. So
Subir is already left, so.
Yeah, no. Okay, that's done. Shrikant's okay, very well explained, very great. Thank you so much for all the appreciation. Really humbles me a lot. Okay, so up to what age, up to which age is X-ray of arm gives the accurate picture regarding age, ma'am? So this is sorry, Jayabrata Ghosh. Thank you so much again for asking this question. Until 16 years old of the child, your specificity is around 98.9. Having said that, it can go till 18.4, but the specificity every year will keep reducing. So let's say by 18, you're around only around 80% specific towards what exactly is happening. So the best time is between 13 to 16. You don't have to do it before 13 also. Between 13 to 16 is a good time. After that, the specificity starts to go simply because the bone starts to fuse. Once the bones are fused, then it's very hard because the child is already attained the physical maturity, right? Now, Mr. or yeah, Suri Mudliar, how to identify burnout and how to bring back to normal activity. So identifying burnout is extremely important, sir. You'll start to see that the child starts to become suddenly lethargic, something what he could do very easily a week before he's not able to do it. Okay, his skill levels have gone down. He's performing poorly constantly, but these are physical signs. His mental signs could be he suddenly starts to become aloof from the group. Okay, he's not active. He's trying to miss sessions to come and train. He's not motivated enough to train. He's constantly into frustrated, or he's trying to fight with his athletes, I mean fellow mates, or he's not taking your commands very supportively. All those are signs of a child going to a burnout phase. Now, the moment you identify that, the first thing first is to stop that load. You have to break that barrier, seek more, give into the investigations, try and seek out the answers that what is happening wrong. That's why I said the first slide, include the athlete, create an environment where the child feels more and more secure enough to come and speak out very honestly to you, and then try to create a plan for him to come out slowly. The physical capacity can still be regained sooner. The mental breakdown sometimes can take even 6 to 9 months also for it to come. So that will be very, you really have to create an environment around for him to start to feel better, sir, and it will be very much individual depending upon what level and what kind of athlete are you dealing with. So that's how you need to be very careful about identifying and managing a burnout situation. Now, Mr. Nitin Patil asks, thank you, Ms. Komal Sharma. Thank you, Naresh, for all the appreciation. Mr. Nitin Patil says, in stage of 5 or 6, does athletes can weight training, how much load of that practice? So yes, by stage 5 or 6, we are definitely dealing with almost a level of athlete which is training. 100% that the weight training load has to be there, but obviously you need to be depending upon how is matured, how much is able to take it up, what level, what point of your periodization cycle are you training. All of that will come into it. So it's not just blindly following the weeks of training. It needs to be very progressive, very systematic, and very specific. Now, how much load of practice, it will all depend upon what. So let's say, just to give an example, in 6 weeks time, there is a national championship coming up. The first week will be building block of physicality. That means you ask the child to come into the camp. He's doing all the physical aspect of the sport, physical and conditioning aspect of the sport, which is important for him to play that sport. From the second week, third week, fourth week, he's going to do more and more technical training along with the physical capacity going higher. By fourth week, you reduce the physical capacity because now you know that the physical adaptation has happened. And you want him to prepare for the bigger competition. So more and more skill specific competition starts to happen. Skill specific training happens. By week 5, you've had a very good training block. By week 5 to week 6, that means 1 week before the competition, you taper down the training cycle. You allow the body to become more refreshed. You want the child or the athlete to go more and more fresh to that competition. But you don't completely stop training because whatever 5 weeks before you've done will be completely off waste. So you optimally designed based upon what stage you have got. That's why if one principle you have to understand is to understand the principle of periodization. How do you periodize a certain competition? The moment you understand that, everything else becomes very easy. All right. Thank you so much, Prasannaji. Komal ma'am, thank you. All the speakers are very informative and useful lectures. Thank you so much. I will be very thankful if you provide your lecture along with PDF and my voice also. How do I give my voice in PDF? Okay, I will give you my lecture with voice, yes, and PDF also will come to you. Sir will be able to coordinate with you and you will have the PDFs. How winning and losing can affect the performance at adolescence age. How to tackle that, Mr. Surya Prabhu? Very, very good. Subraya Prabhu, thank you so much for asking this again. Very, very valid question. Sir, it can affect a lot. Winning is highly motivating. What happens is when you win a competition, lot of things which are your weakness also goes under the curtain because you don't, everything is all about winning. But actually when you lose, it becomes emotionally so challenging that at times coaches, athletes, parents, we start to over investigate. Why did he lose? Can we do something better, not him to lose? One thing all of us have to understand, then in the world of sport, you will lose more championships than you actually win. Roger Federer has won 19 Grand Slam, but he's played more than 40 Grand Slam in his life. So just think about it. Somebody who we consider him greatest also has only 50% of success ratio. So the moment you create an environment that, listen, winning and losing is going to be a part of it. You don't become too over the moon when you win. You don't completely go down under the earth when you lose also. So that's why a coach or a physio or a trainer working with a child has to be very, very informative about how do you manage winning and losing. But clearly, if you winning could be tough, sir. I understand that if the child is constantly winning to keep a motivation alive is very difficult. Then the best thing what you do is kind of investigate and then give him a break. Allow him to go and do studies, let him have a break, enjoy some family time. When he's physically and mentally fresh, then start the program again. So that's how you can, that's one way of building it across. What kind of food, simple things like act of joy, all of that.
शनिवार भाई छुट्टी से ऑफिस की सोमवार को याद दिलाना एक बार चेक करेंगे हमारी बात
Sorry,
संडे छुट्टी होती है ना ऑफिस
I think somebody has muted it. Mr. Balveer Singh.
सोमवार को याद दिलाते ना फिर पूछेंगे.
Okay, now the next question is how can we recognize the skeletal age through X-ray? What are the markers? Please explain, sir, how can we do it in practicality? So this, as I said, it could only mean, so you need to have a software which is in a certain radiological department can have it. Almost all the radiologists in the country are well trained enough to kind of give you that information. If you take a good X-ray, digital X-ray of left hand, and if you do it before the age of 16, and then you go on to ask that there are softwares which a radiologist or even orthopedic doctors can easily be able to help you to derive that information. So it's not a complicated procedure. You can easily do it and everyone can do it. As I said, you don't have to overdo it. Once in a year between 13 to 16 is a good enough marker. The frequency is also very less. So it's in a very safe limit only what it can be done. Right? I hope I've answered you this question. Now, after Miss Nikita, after having an injury, players sometimes are feared to come back in the sport. How to deal with that? So that's where the moment the child is injured, your positive reinforcement, the clarity of the commands has to be very succinct and very clear. That's why the moment we sometimes very easily say कि ACL हो गया है, आपका ligament टूट गया है. Now, anterior cruciate ligament, you and me very well understand it. When it breaks, what is the mechanism? You and me very well understand it. Please understand, even a 25-year-old grown mature adult may not understand what ACL is, may not understand the meaning of strain and strain, may not understand what high grade tear means, may not understand the words like effusion, may not understand things like edematic lesion. So if one thing today you can take from this lecture is if we can make it more and more conducive and people to understand what we are speaking is the most important thing. I don't understand your command. If I speak in Russian language or Tamil now, nobody will understand what I'm speaking. But the moment I'm speaking a language which is easier for you to comprehend, the information is far more well established. Now, coming to your specific question, while the athlete is going through the rehab phase, you have to build it up. The constant information needs to be reinforced time and again. That it will take 9 months post ACL. That 9 months takes from day 1 to 9 or 10 months. In the day 1, you don't create a illogical target, right? Sometimes we say 4 mahine mein theek ho jayega. Don't do that kind of a creation of a illogical target which may become difficult for you and the athlete. So more and more clear, succinct, and absolute commands are the best, are the things what you can give it to the child or to the athlete, whoever you're working with. Last few questions. Any method of knowing how much and to how much? The wellness parameters. There are a lot of softwares, or even you can start writing simple things like sleep cycle, resting heart rate, ability to train, eagerness to train, soreness, food habits. If this 6 parameters you start to put into 1 into 10, and week by week you create an Excel sheet, you will get a very good parameter the child is going towards a overtraining zone or not, right? And thank you so much, everybody. Absolutely useful, sir. I'm giving basketball coaching under 8 to 5. Some of the children getting leg injury. What are the first step to taken immediately? Sir, the best, as much as you will be extremely good in your technical coaching, I would strongly suggest, rather than me giving you a blind answer, you have, if you have medical doctors, orthopedic doctors, physios around you, please utilize their services. Try and identify that why that leg injury is coming. When you say leg injury, it could mean everything and anything. So the best thing is, the moment you start to see a problem, please seek professional help. That will be my suggestion. One thing you want to say, when many of the capable students end up playing a competition in a year and the scope of development is pretty limited, there's barely any periodization training. What sport enthusiast or government should do to question? Sir, it will all depend. Mr. Asutosh Bist, you have asked a very valid question, but that's where you have to sit across and talk to a child in terms of, you cannot play every single day of your life to compete. You have to learn to pick up the competitions, and that's where the periodization needs to happen. That's why Olympic happens only once in 4 years. World Cup happens only once in 4 years, because you cannot potentially give your best every single month. So the moment you understand that philosophy, you can transfer that information to the child and the parent and anybody else in that thing very well. Nikita ma'am, thank you. Mr. Styleman, thank you. Suri Mudliar, thank you so much. Anu Joshi, thank you so much. So yeah, I think I've answered all my questions. If I've missed anything, my apologies. I'm happy to answer. Over to you, sir. I think I've short my time by 6 months. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Shrikant. Thanks a lot for this complete informative session and very interactive too. And I can see everyone is very happy and elated. And they'll be more elated when they get your PDF. And if you don't mind, you can mention your email also into that, so they can remain in touch with you. So
yeah, you'll have, when I send my PDF, I think you can, I'll give my details and they can be in touch with me.
Yeah,
the
sure.
only thing with this, the one last point I can make, sir, today with this platform is, let us create an environment of harmony among professionals. The moment all the doctors, the physio, the coaches, the parent, the child is, everybody is in, and the whole ecosystem is around making the best for the child, everything else is then easy. And most importantly, I've always told that myself. I'm telling that one thing to anyone who's listening today. Please do not be satisfied by scoring 9 out of 10. 9.5 out of 10 also is not good enough. If you can secure 10 out of 10 is what will actually end up the child becoming better, you becoming better in managing your work situation. So that's the only thing. Please ask more from yourself, and we all have to keep learning, and we have to create a good group among for us to really. So people like Dr. Vikram has done some fabulous work in getting the people aligned. So be connected to each other. One person cannot have all the answers. We all have to work together to bring more and more understanding of the subject within our network. Okay, thanks for that. Thank you.
Exactly, well said, Shrikant, because definitely orthopedician cannot understand what a physiotherapist knows, and a physical education teacher, his domain is definitely different. Even a yoga teacher, her knowledge is different. So we all can create a definitely environment which can help to in the uplift of sport in India. So thank you guys. And tomorrow we have a very special session that will start at 10 a.m. and we are going to talk about emergencies in sports. So we will be talking about all the first aid techniques of the fractures, bruises, lacerations, basic life support, advanced cardiac life support, and everything related to emergency in sports. So tomorrow we will start at 10 a.m. sharp, and this is going to be a 4-hour session up to 2 o'clock. So thanks again, Shrikant, and thanks again, delegates. So we are signing out now. Goodbye.